It happened in a split second, but the silence afterward stretched for miles. Maya Thompson sat at her usual lunch table, a weathered corner of the cafeteria that most people ignored unless they needed a quiet place to scroll through TikTok or finish homework last minute. She liked it that way, quiet, predictable, safe. But safety is a fragile illusion, especially in high school. Behind her, a group of students moved through the lunchroom with the false swagger of kids who'd never faced consequences. At the front was Tyler Grayson, the kind of guy teachers called misunderstood and girls described as troubled but hot. He was a senior, captain of the wrestling team, and known for walking the fine line between class clown and full-blown menace. And today, that line was about to be shattered. Tyler sauntered past Maya, then doubled back with the casual cruelty of someone who had planned this moment down to the second. In his right hand, clutched loosely like it was nothing more than a toy, was a pair of silver scissors. "Damn, Maya," he drawled loud enough for half the cafeteria to hear. "That afro looks like it's been through a wind tunnel." A few snickers followed. Maya didn't turn around. She had learned long ago that acknowledging jerks only fed their fire. But that didn't stop Tyler. In one swift, horrifying motion, he reached down and snipped a thick chunk of Maya's carefully styled curls. The sound was subtle, just a whisper of blades slicing through hair, but its impact was explosive. Gasps echoed across the room. One girl dropped her phone. Someone whispered, "Did he just?" Maya froze. For a heartbeat, she didn't feel anything, just the cool draft against her now exposed neck. She reached up slowly and felt the uneven tufts where her crown used to be. Then she stood. Not with rage. Not with tears. Just stillness. The kind of stillness that made people uncomfortable. That made you wonder what was coming next. Tyler grinned, twirling the thick lock of her hair in his fingers like it was some kind of trophy. "Lighten up," he smirked. "It's just hair." Maya turned to face him. Their eyes locked. He expected tears, maybe a shout, or even a slap. What he didn't expect was what he saw. Unblinking calm. The kind of calm that didn't mean surrender, it meant control. Dangerous control. That's when the phones came out. "Yo, someone record this," someone hissed. Click. Snap. Record. The internet was about to meet Maya Thompson. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Maya walked out of the cafeteria without saying a word. She didn't pick up her tray. Didn't grab her bag. She left it all there like she didn't need it anymore. Because maybe she didn't. Outside, the November air bit at her skin. She walked toward the school's side parking lot, the one where the juniors parked their beat-up Hondas and hand-me-down pickups. She found the first empty bench and sat down. She didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, she touched the uneven spot on her head again. Her curls were more than just hair. They were hours of twisting and care, late-night YouTube tutorials, and weekend sessions with her mom. They were pride. They were identity. They were her. Now, part of that identity was in Tyler Grayson's hand. And it was going viral. In the classroom above the lunchroom, Ellie Sanders had seen the whole thing from the window. She gasped aloud when she saw Maya walk out, head high, but empty in a way that made Ellie's stomach turn. Without thinking, she pulled out her phone and opened Instagram. 10 seconds in, the video was already posted by @JasonGrayson99, Tyler's younger brother. Caption: Tyler with the W face with tears of joy scissors. Ellie didn't find it funny. Neither did hundreds of others. Comments were already pouring in. "This is assault. Maya's a queen. This is disgusting. Where is this? She handled that like a boss FRFR. We need to talk about bullying in schools, for real." At BLM at NAACP at Teen Vogue get on this. Ellie screenshot the post and texted it to Maya. No caption. Just the facts. Inside the principal's office, Mr. Hernandez stared at his phone in horror. He'd just gotten a dozen emails in 5 minutes, all linking to the same video. By the time Tyler was called to the office, the video had hit 50,000 views on TikTok. He walked in still smirking. That smirk didn't last. Across town, Maya's mom, Carla Thompson, was finishing her hospital shift. She was exhausted, running on cold coffee and adrenaline. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ellie Sanders. "You need to see this." Followed by the video. Carla stood frozen in the nurse's lounge, eyes locked on the tiny screen. She dropped her thermos. Her hands shook. Then she picked up her phone and called the school. "Put the principal on. Now." At home that evening, Maya sat on the edge of her bathtub, staring at the mirror. The scissors sat beside her. Clean. Silent. Sharp. Her mother entered quietly and sat beside her. "Baby, we can fix it," Carla said softly. Maya shook her head. "No, Mom. It's not about fixing. It's about owning it." She took the scissors and, hand steady, trimmed the rest of her hair down to the scalp. When she finished, she looked at herself. Not broken. Not weak. Powerful. That night, Maya posted a video of her own. No music. No filters. Just her, bald-headed and strong, looking directly into the camera. "I may have lost some hair today, but I didn't lose myself," she said. To every girl who's been laughed at, touched without permission, or told she's too much, stand tall. They only try to break what they're afraid of. The video hit 1 million views by morning. Before the video. Before the scissors. Before the world knew her name. Maya Thompson was just another quiet black girl in a mostly white town, trying not to be seen but always feeling too visible. She had lived in Maplewood, Minnesota, since she was 9. Her mom took a nursing job at the county hospital after Maya's father passed away in Atlanta. The move was supposed to be a new beginning. Fresh air, good schools, less crime, her mom had promised. But no one warned them about the subtle ways a town could make you feel like you didn't belong. At Eastview High, Maya walked the halls like a shadow. She wasn't unpopular, exactly, just unacknowledged. Her name wasn't whispered at lockers. No one asked her to dances. Teachers always spelled her name right on tests, but mispronounced it during roll call. Maya was okay with it. She had her books. Her routines. Her mom. And, of course, her hair. Every Sunday night, Maya and her mom would sit at the kitchen table under the glow of their hanging light, combs and conditioners spread out like tools of war. They would part and twist, grease and curl, sometimes in silence, sometimes laughing over old family stories. Hair was sacred. Her mother used to say, "Baby, your hair tells the story of every woman that came before you. Don't ever let anyone make you ashamed of that." Maya believed her. Until the world gave her reasons not to. The first time someone made fun of her hair, she was 11. A boy in 5th grade reached out, without asking, and grabbed a puff of her twists. "Is it real?" he asked, tugging like she was a science experiment. That night, Maya cried in her room. Her mom held her and whispered, "You are not made to be understood by everyone. You're made to stand out." So Maya learned to build walls. Soft, invisible ones. She smiled politely. Nodded in class. Spoke when called on, but never too loud. She became an expert at shrinking herself. Except when she was in the dojang. Taekwondo had started as an after-school activity her mom insisted on, something to keep Maya active, help her gain confidence. What neither of them expected was how quickly Maya would fall in love with it. At 10, she learned to block. At 11, she learned to strike. At 12, she broke her first board, and with it, a piece of her fear. By 13, she had earned her black belt. But Maya never told anyone at school. Not because she was ashamed, but because it was hers. Pure. Uncontaminated by cafeteria whispers or hallway rumors. In the dojang, no one asked about her hair. No one grabbed her without permission. She was strong. Respected. Focused. It was the only place she truly felt like Maya. At school, she was still just the girl with the big hair and the big books. She excelled in English and history, kept a 4.0 GPA, and worked weekends at the local library. Her dream was to become a civil rights lawyer, someone who fought with her mind the way others fought with fists. She had a small circle of friends, well, maybe more like satellites. People who smiled at her in class, but didn't really know her. Except Ellie. Ellie Sanders was the only person Maya ever confided in about her past, her dad, and her training. They'd met in 7th grade when they were assigned a group project on Harriet Tubman. While everyone else slacked off, Ellie and Maya ended up staying after school for a week straight, building a diorama and laughing over bad glue gun burns. Since then, they'd been, well, not best friends, exactly. But real ones. Ellie understood when Maya didn't feel like talking. She asked questions, but never pushed. And she never, ever touched Maya's hair without asking. That alone made her different. Even with Ellie, Maya kept part of herself locked away. There were moments, microaggressions, jokes that stung sharper than they should have, that Maya didn't share. Like the time a substitute teacher told her she was so articulate, in a tone that felt more surprised than impressed. Or when a girl at the school dance said, "You'd be so pretty if you straightened your hair." Maya swallowed those moments like bitter pills. There was no space for outrage when you were the only black girl in the room. Still, she had her anchors. The kitchen table on Sundays. The worn-out mats of the dojang. Her mother's hands, strong and gentle. She had discipline. Purpose. A quiet fire that burned under layers of control. She never expected to use it. Until the day Tyler Grayson decided her hair was a joke. Tyler had never looked twice at Maya before that day. Their worlds didn't intersect. He dated cheerleaders and crashed parties. She volunteered at food drives and read Audre Lorde in her free time. But Maya knew his type. The kind of boy who'd never been told no and thought power came from attention. She didn't hate him. She just didn't think about him at all. That was the real crime, probably. He didn't cut her hair because he hated her. He did it because he didn't see her. And now, the whole world did. That night, as Maya lay in bed, freshly bald and raw with emotion, she let herself remember. Her dad's voice, warm and low, "You've got the heart of a lion, Peanut. Never forget that." The way her mom used to hum as she braided Maya's baby hairs down to sleep. The first time she kicked through a wooden board and the instructor's shocked expression turned into pride. Every piece of her past came back like armor. She wasn't going to be a victim in a viral video. She was going to be the story that came after it. The outside world saw a quiet girl who walked fast through the hallways with her head down and her earbuds in. But inside the dojang, Maya Thompson was a storm in motion. The building didn't look like much from the street. Just an old brick storefront wedged between a laundromat and a payday loan place. The sign above the entrance read Carter's Martial Arts and Self-Defense in faded gold letters. To Maya, it was a second home. Inside, the smell of rubber mats and eucalyptus oil hit her the moment she stepped through the door. The sounds of practice echoed off the walls, sharp yells, the thud of feet, the occasional satisfying crack of a board breaking. Maya slipped off her sneakers and bowed before stepping onto the mat. No words. Just discipline. That was the rule here. Ms. Carter stood at the center, commanding the room with the ease of someone who'd fought her own wars. A former competitive martial artist turned instructor, she was in her 40s, lean and precise, with a voice that could cut through any excuse. She noticed Maya immediately. "You're late," she said, one eyebrow raised. Maya gave a slight bow. "I needed the quiet." Ms. Carter nodded. She didn't ask what had happened, yet. But Maya knew the talk was coming. Maya had started Taekwondo when she was 10, shortly after they moved to Minnesota. Her mom had dragged her in one rainy afternoon after Maya came home crying from school, her backpack soaked and her pride worse. "I want her to learn how to protect herself," her mom had said, lips tight with quiet fury. "And not just with her fists." Ms. Carter had agreed on one condition: she'll have to want it more than I do. She did. It started slow, awkward stances, bruised shins, sore wrists. But something clicked early on. The repetition, the structure, the control, it gave Maya a place where her body wasn't something to be picked at or joked about. It was a tool. A temple. A weapon if needed. She remembered the day she earned her yellow belt, the way Ms. Carter's expression didn't change, but her eyes gleamed with pride. "I don't hand out belts for showing up," she'd said. "You earned that with every drop of sweat on this mat." Now, nearly 7 years later, Maya was one of the few students with a black belt in the dojo. She trained twice a week, sometimes more when school didn't bury her in tests and papers. But tonight was different. Tonight, she wasn't there to sharpen her form. She was there to remember who she was. After warm-ups, Ms. Carter called her over. "Front office showed me the video," she said, arms crossed. "Tyler Grayson, huh?" Maya blinked. "You know him?" "I know his father. Was a senior when I was a freshman." Same kind of energy. Privilege wrapped in charm. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Ms. Carter said, "You gonna swing back?" Maya shook her head. "That's not what this place taught me." "No," Ms. Carter agreed. "But it taught you not to shrink." Maya looked away. "I didn't fight back because I wasn't scared. I was just tired. Like if I moved, something inside me would snap." "That wasn't weakness," Ms. Carter said. "That was restraint. But don't confuse silence with surrender. What he took from you, he thought it was just hair. But you and I know it was more." Maya clenched her fists. "It was identity. My mom spent years teaching me how to love my hair." He turned it into a punchline. "Then take it back," Ms. Carter said simply. They trained in silence for the next hour. Kicks. Blocks. Forms repeated until her limbs ached. Maya focused on every breath, every movement. She imagined her fear with each jab. Her humiliation with each strike. Her doubt with every roundhouse kick. When she broke a board clean through, the echo made the younger students look over. Ms. Carter didn't say a word, but she nodded once. After class, Maya lingered. The dojo had mostly cleared out. Ms. Carter wiped down the mats while Maya sat in the corner with a bottle of water. "Can I ask you something?" Maya said quietly. Ms. Carter looked up. "Always. Why didn't you ever teach us to fight angry?" Ms. Carter chuckled softly. "Because anger burns too fast. It's a flash fire. You need something that lasts." Maya nodded slowly. "I think I'm ready to last," she whispered. That night, as Maya walked home, her muscles sore and lungs full of cold air, she felt something she hadn't felt since the incident. Power. Not the kind that needed cameras or revenge. The kind that came from knowing who you are, even when someone else tries to erase it. When she got home, her mom was sitting at the table with a laptop open and a mug of tea untouched. "You didn't call," Carla said. "I was at the dojo," Maya answered, setting down her bag. Her mom studied her. "How was it?" Maya smiled faintly. Like I remembered who I am. Carla got up and hugged her. No words. Then she pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. What's this? A letter. From the National Taekwondo Youth Invitational. Ms. Carter submitted your name weeks ago. They want you in the Winter Championships. In D.C. Maya blinked. Wait, what? Carla smiled. Guess your secret's out. Maya opened the letter and scanned the contents. Dates. Travel info. Registration form. At the bottom. We're honored to invite Maya Thompson, 17, black belt, as a competitor in the women's lightweight division. It was real. A national spotlight. A platform. A chance to rise. She looked up at her mother, heart pounding. Do I say yes? Her mom reached out and touched the smooth skin of her head. You already did the hard part. You showed the world what strength looks like. Now go show them how it moves. Maya woke up the next morning with a strange sense of weightlessness, like her head wasn't quite her own. She touched her scalp out of habit, expecting softness, volume, the familiar cloud of curls. But her fingers met skin. Smooth. Bare. It wasn't a dream. Her hair was gone. And for a moment, that fact crushed her like a boulder on her chest. She sat on the edge of her bed, wrapped in silence. The buzz from the previous night's viral video, the noise from the outside world, it all seemed far away now. All that remained was this room, this mirror, and the version of herself she didn't recognize. Her phone buzzed again. 1,472 unread messages. Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, even email. Strangers from around the country were reaching out, some offering support, others just clout chasing. One DM caught her eye. My sister saw your video. She cried. Thank you for standing strong. At Brown Beauty Collective. Another. They did the same thing to me in 8th grade. You're not alone. At Curlika Justice. Maya blinked back tears. She hadn't planned to inspire anyone. She just didn't want to be invisible anymore. She remembered the way it felt, Tyler's scissors slicing through months of care like it meant nothing. The way people laughed. Or worse, looked away. She remembered the heat rising in her chest, the way her fists clenched instinctively, the restraint it took not to react. But what stung most wasn't the act itself, it was the memory of every single time someone had made her feel too black, too bold, too much. This wasn't the first time someone tried to reduce her to a stereotype. It was just the first time the whole world watched. Downstairs, her mom was already on the phone with the school again. Maya caught snatches of the conversation. This is a serious breach of safety, yes, I expect suspension, at minimum, no, a 2-day timeout isn't justice. Maya stepped into the kitchen just as her mom hung up. They're still reviewing the footage, Carla said, her voice tight. But I'm not letting this slide. I know, Maya said quietly, pouring herself some cereal. But I don't want revenge. I want change. Carla exhaled. That's my girl. Later that day, Maya sat at her desk, scrolling through old photos on her phone, first day of school selfies, blurry mirror pics, goofy snapshots with Ellie. In nearly every one, her hair was the centerpiece. Big, coiled, vibrant. Her crown. She remembered the hours of wash days. The sting of detangling. The coconut oil. The YouTube tutorials. Her mom singing old R&B while parting sections with her fingers. Her hair wasn't just a style. It was a legacy. A battle between acceptance and rejection. And she had been winning. Until now. Tears finally came, not from shame, but from grief. Real, gut-level grief. Because losing your hair as a black girl isn't just about looks. It's about losing protection. A part of her armor had been stripped away in one careless motion. But as the tears fell, something else stirred inside her. Anger. Not the kind that scorches and fades, but the slow-burning kind. The kind that fuels revolutions. That demands answers. That builds fire. That night, Maya stood in front of her bathroom mirror, lit only by the warm glow of the vanity light. She turned her head slowly, studying her new silhouette. She expected to hate it. But she didn't. There was something striking about it, raw and unfiltered. Her eyes looked sharper. Her jawline stronger. Her presence, undeniable. For the first time, she didn't look small. She looked unbreakable. A knock on the door pulled her from her reflection. It was Ellie. She held a small paper bag. I brought deep conditioner. Not that you need it now, but... I don't know. Habit. Maya smiled and stepped aside. They sat cross-legged on the floor of her room, an old Beyoncé album playing low in the background. I should have said something when it happened, Ellie admitted. But I froze. I didn't know what to do. You didn't need to, Maya said. You texted my mom. That meant everything. Ellie looked down at the bag. It's so messed up. He just touched you like that. Like you're not even a person. Maya nodded slowly. He didn't just cut my hair. He tried to cut my voice. Ellie looked up. But he didn't. Maya's eyes burned. No. He didn't. The next morning, Maya opened a Google Doc titled #Cut from the Roots, a manifesto. She stared at the blinking cursor. Then typed the first line. This isn't about hair. This is about power. By lunchtime, she had drafted a short, powerful essay about autonomy, identity, and the coded violence black girls face every day, at school, in media, in silence. She ended it with a simple declaration. We are not your jokes. We are not your experiments. We are not your trends. We are here. Loud, proud, bold if we have to be, and still powerful. Always. She posted it to Instagram alongside a new photo, her in a black hoodie, bald head glowing in the sunlight, one eyebrow slightly raised like a dare. The caption read. #Cut from the roots, but still rising. Who's with me? The post went viral in under 2 hours. Celebrities reposted it. Natural hair influencers commented. Advocacy groups reached out. But more than anything, girls responded. Hundreds of them. Some with photos of their curls. Some with shaved heads. Some with stories. Maya read every one. And in each message, she saw a reflection of herself. A girl who had been laughed at, touched without permission, underestimated. But now. They were done shrinking. Tyler may have cut her hair. But Maya had started a movement. And the fire was only getting hotter. By Monday morning, Eastview High was a war zone of whispers. The school hadn't even opened its doors yet, but the front steps were already crawling with reporters, students with phones out, and a few protesters holding handwritten signs. Hair is not a joke. Protect black girls. Justice for Maya. Inside the main office, Principal Monroe stood behind closed blinds, his tie loosened, his coffee cold. He had just finished a call with the school board. His face said it all. Trouble. In the hallway, Maya walked with her hood up, not out of shame, but to keep the circus at bay. Her locker had been stuffed with notes. Some kind. Some not. A few people stopped her to say, thank you. Others averted their eyes. But the most common reaction? Silence. The kind of silence that creeps into a room when people are afraid to say the wrong thing, or admit the truth. When the morning announcements played over the intercom, Maya listened closely. Principal Monroe's voice crackled through the speakers. Good morning, students. Today, we want to remind everyone that Eastview High is a place of respect, inclusivity, and zero tolerance for bullying or harassment of any kind. Maya's jaw tightened. We're aware of an incident last week that has garnered national attention. Please know we are conducting a full investigation. Out of respect for the privacy of those involved, we cannot comment further at this time. That was it. No name. No apology. No accountability. Just a hollow corporate script read by a man too afraid to take a side. Maya sat in second period English like a statue. Her favorite teacher, Mr. Bryant, avoided eye contact. He always encouraged free expression, but today didn't mention her manifesto, her video, or the news coverage. Instead, he jumped straight into Shakespeare. A boy in the back raised his hand and asked with a smirk, "Do you think Juliet would have shaved her head if Romeo cut her hair?" The class laughed. Mr. Bryant didn't say a word. Maya stood up. "I'll be in the library," she said, her voice steady. Mr. Bryant opened his mouth, then closed it again. No one stopped her. In the library, Ellie was already waiting. "They suspended Tyler," she whispered, sliding into the seat beside her. 3 days. That's it. Maya blinked. 3 days. That's what I heard from Jason's girlfriend. It's not official. They're trying to keep it low-key. Maya leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling tiles. "He put scissors to my head in a crowded room. There are videos. Witnesses. And I'm the one carrying this." Ellie looked down. "It's not fair." "No," Maya said. "It's expected." By lunch, the hashtags had reached national news. CNN. BuzzFeed. The Shade Room. Even Teen Vogue. But inside the cafeteria, everything felt normal. Or rather, forced normal. Tyler's table was empty. The usual clique of athletes and class clowns looked scattered, like they weren't sure where to sit without him. Some students glanced at Maya, others deliberately didn't. She noticed a few whispering near the vending machines, their eyes darting toward her like she was a story they'd only seen online but weren't ready to meet in real life. Later that afternoon, Maya was called to the office. Carla was already there, seated stiffly across from Principal Monroe. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with a mother's storm. Monroe cleared his throat. "Maya, please sit." Maya took her seat slowly, crossing her arms. "We want to acknowledge the pain this situation has caused," he began. Maya raised an eyebrow. "Pain, huh? We understand how important identity and personal boundaries are," Monroe continued, "and we deeply regret the disruption to your learning environment." Carla interrupted. "We're not here for vague regrets, Mr. Monroe. We want action." He fidgeted with a pen. "Tyler has been suspended. And we're drafting a letter to send home to parents, affirming our anti-bullying policies." Maya's voice was low, controlled. "So he gets 3 days, and I get a lifetime of explaining this scar on my identity?" Monroe paused. "We hope to use this as a teaching moment." Maya leaned forward. "Then teach. Name what happened. Say the words, 'A black student was assaulted for how she wears her hair.' That is not acceptable here. If you can't say that, you're not teaching anything." Silence. Then Monroe said the most dangerous thing an adult can say to a teenager. "You don't want to make this bigger than it needs to be." Carla stood up, calm but fierce. "She's not making it bigger. You're trying to make it smaller." That night, Maya posted a new video. This time, she spoke directly to the camera. "Today, I sat in a room with people who wanted me to stay quiet. Who wanted to turn my story into a lesson plan they could file away and forget. But I'm not a moment. I'm not a teaching tool. I'm a person. And this won't be brushed under a rug. Not now. Not ever. Her voice didn't shake once. The next morning, more students started speaking up. A Latina girl posted about being told her hoop earrings were too ghetto by a teacher. A hijabi student talked about being sent to the nurse's office because her scarf was distracting. A trans student shared their story about being misgendered daily, with no correction from staff. The stories piled up. Maya reposted every single one. She turned her page into a platform. By the end of the week, the school board scheduled a community forum. They hadn't expected the turnout. Parents, teachers, students, even alumni. One by one, people stepped to the mic. Some shared anger. Others confusion. Some spoke of fear. But Maya? She spoke of fire. We're not just here to be protected. We're here to be heard. If your policies don't protect all students, especially the ones most vulnerable, then they don't protect any of us. We don't want pity. We want justice. She ended with 5 words that lit the room. This isn't over. It starts. For the first time in 4 years, the student council meeting was standing room only. What was once a sleepy after-school obligation for overachievers and resume builders had suddenly become the most talked-about event at Eastview High. Flyers had gone out. DMs had been sent. Even kids who didn't know where the library was had shown up. And right in the middle of it all sat Maya Thompson. No hood. No fear. Only fire. President Jenny Lin tapped the mic, clearly overwhelmed by the crowd. Wow. Okay. Thanks everyone for coming. We're gonna jump right in. Someone from the back yelled, "Start with the hair." A ripple of nervous laughter followed, but Jenny didn't smile. Actually, yeah, she said. We are starting with the hair. Maya felt every eye in the room turn to her, but this time, it didn't sting. It didn't shrink her. She stood up. I never meant to become the center of this, she began. I just wanted to feel safe at school. Like my body, my culture, my presence, wasn't up for debate. A hush fell over the room. I'm not the only one. I know some of you have stories you haven't told. Maybe because you thought no one would care. Maybe because you were scared of making a scene. She looked around slowly. Well, the scene's already made. So let's use it. That night, the hashtag Cut from the Roots group chat was born. By morning, it had over 60 members. By the end of the week, 300. Maya didn't lead it like a queen, she nurtured it like a garden. She shared space. Listened. Amplified. People submitted anonymous stories. Shared teacher microaggressions. Talked about cafeteria segregation no one ever admitted existed. They didn't just talk about race. They talked about gender, sexuality, class, neurodivergence. The conversation grew bigger, richer. What started as a single act of cruelty became a catalyst. The following Friday, the group staged their first action, the Crown Walk. At 10 a.m., nearly a third of the student body stood up and silently walked out of class. They gathered in the courtyard, heads held high, wearing natural hair in every form, froze, braids, twists, curls, or bald and proud. Signs read. My crown, my choice. Respect is the dress code. Black hair is not a distraction. A local news crew captured it. TikTok blew up. But more importantly, the faculty couldn't ignore it. Principal Monroe came out halfway through, flanked by 2 security guards. He stood at the edge, unsure whether to stop it, or applaud. He chose silence. Again. That weekend, Maya was invited to speak on a podcast run by a local civil rights group. The host, a young black woman named Kendra, leaned into the mic. Maya, you've become the voice of something much bigger than just Eastview. What keeps you grounded? Maya paused. My mom, she said softly. And the girls who haven't spoken yet. Kendra smiled. What do you want people listening to take from your story? Maya looked straight at the mic. That silence doesn't protect you. And being the first voice is terrifying, but it gives others permission to speak. The next week at school, a black freshman girl named Rhea caught up to Maya outside the gym. She was small, with wide eyes and box braids that swung when she walked. You don't know me, Rhea said, nervous. But I wanted to say thank you. Maya smiled. I'm glad you're here. Rhea hesitated. I used to tie my hair back every day. Like tight. So no one would say anything. Today I let it down. She turned, letting Maya see the full length of her braids. They're beautiful, Maya said. Rhea beamed. But not everyone was thrilled. Posters from #CutFromTheRoots started disappearing from hallways. An anonymous Instagram account popped up. At keepitneutral.es. It posted statements like, not everything is about race. Some of us are just trying to graduate. There's a right way to handle things, and this isn't it. Maya didn't respond directly. But she noticed the pattern. The moment black girls spoke too loudly, too confidently, someone always called it too much. But she'd spent years being small. She wasn't going back. Ms. Carter noticed the shift too. After practice one evening, she handed Maya a piece of paper. Thought you'd want to see this. It was a flyer. Youth Civil Rights Summit, Washington, D.C. Featured student panel, leading loudly. You've been invited, Ms. Carter said. Maya blinked. What? Why me? Why not you? Ms. Carter replied. You're not just fighting for hair. You're leading with heart. At home, Maya sat on the floor of her room, the flyer beside her. She thought about that day in the cafeteria. The scissors. The laughter. The silence. She thought about the fire it lit. Not just in her, but in hundreds of others. And she realized something. Tyler had cut her hair. But she had grown something bigger in its place. A voice. A movement. A future. The whispers had become voices. The voices were becoming action. And Maya? She was just getting started. Tyler Grayson sat in his room, staring at the same blank wall he'd stared at every night for the past week. The sound of his mom's footsteps down the hallway barely registered anymore. The house was eerily quiet these days, no loud music, no friends knocking on the door, no urgent messages from his basketball teammates. It was just silence. And it was crushing. The suspension had been a slap in the face. He thought it would pass, that the heat would die down, that his life would go back to normal once the drama faded. After all, he wasn't really the villain here, right? He'd just been messing around, doing what guys do, messing with a girl who thought she was untouchable. But no one saw it that way anymore. Not the way his friends had laughed about it. Not the way everyone had been talking about it online. Not the way the principal had looked at him like he was some kind of criminal when he was called to the office the day after the incident. Tyler had always been popular. He had swagger. He had a reputation. But now, he was the joke. Tyler, his mom called from downstairs, snapping him out of his thoughts. Your dad's on the phone. His dad. Tyler didn't want to talk to him. Not now. But he picked up the phone anyway, putting on the forced bravado he'd used for years. Hey, Dad. Hey, son, his dad's voice crackled on the other end. I just heard about the suspension. What the hell happened? Tyler could feel his father's disapproval through the line, like a heavy weight pressing against his chest. It was nothing, Dad, Tyler muttered. Just a dumb joke. You know how people get. There was a long pause before his dad spoke again, his voice more serious now. Tyler, that's not what I'm hearing. People are saying you cut a girl's hair, and now it's all over the news. Is that true? Tyler winced. I didn't cut it. It was just a few snips. No big deal. No big deal. His dad's voice grew sharper. You think humiliating a girl in front of everyone is a joke? I didn't mean it like that. It was a mistake, Tyler protested. I was just messing around. I didn't think she'd. His dad cut him off. Well, she did think it, didn't she? And now you've got a whole school looking at you like you're some kind of monster. That's what you've done. Tyler felt the sting of his dad's words, but he wasn't about to show it. He clenched his fists. I know, okay. I'm sorry. I'll figure it out, he said, hanging up before his dad could say anything else. The truth was, Tyler had no idea how to figure it out. He wasn't used to being the one who was criticized, the one who had to apologize. All his life, he'd been able to charm his way out of situations, turn any mistake into a laugh, and make it all go away. But this time, he was stuck. And worse, he didn't even know how to fix things with Maya. He hadn't seen her since that day in the gym. There were whispers at school, but the looks from his friends didn't help. They were distant, almost ashamed. Some even called him out for being a bully. But the one thing he hadn't expected? He hadn't expected the silence. Maya's face kept popping up in his head, her expression when he cut her hair. The shock. The betrayal. And, maybe most painfully, the way she'd looked at him like he was the worst kind of person. He had never meant to hurt her. Hell, he didn't even think she would care that much. It was just hair, right? But it wasn't just hair. Tyler had underestimated her, underestimated how much it meant to her. He hadn't realized that what he'd done was part of a much bigger story, a story of disrespect, of erasure, of people who never got the chance to just be. He didn't understand all of that, not yet. The next morning at school, Tyler walked through the hallways with his head down, trying to avoid everyone's gaze. His locker was plastered with sticky notes, some with hurtful messages like, "You're a joke," and others just reading, "Why?" But there was one note that caught his eye. It was a simple message. I know you're better than this. Be better. No name. Just a reminder. Tyler crumpled the note and shoved it into his pocket. He didn't know who it was from, but something about it stung more than the other notes. It wasn't angry. It wasn't judgmental. It was hopeful. By lunchtime, Tyler knew he couldn't keep running from it. He had to talk to someone. So, when he saw Jason sitting at their usual table, he walked over, dragging his feet. Jason didn't look up. What do you want, man? Tyler took a seat, trying to ignore the awkward silence that hung in the air. I messed up, Tyler said quietly, not sure what else to say. Jason finally looked up, his eyes full of disappointment. You think? Tyler winced. I didn't mean to hurt her. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Jason shook his head. You didn't mean to. Dude, you literally went up to her and cut her hair. What did you think would happen? Tyler stared at his hands. I don't know. I thought it was just gonna be a prank. I didn't think it was a big deal. Yeah, well, now you've got a whole school seeing you as a joke, Jason said, his voice softer now. And Maya's got a whole lot more than just a new haircut. You think that's gonna be easy to fix? Tyler didn't answer. He didn't know how to fix it. By the end of the day, he had made a decision. He wasn't going to hide from it anymore. He was going to go to Maya. He had to. He didn't know what he was going to say. He didn't know if she'd even listen. But he couldn't live with himself knowing that he'd done something wrong and never tried to make it right. Maya was sitting in the library when Tyler found her. She didn't notice him at first, her nose buried in a book, but when she looked up, her expression was guarded. Tyler, she said flatly. What do you want? He hesitated. I'm sorry. For what I did. Maya raised an eyebrow. Sorry. He nodded. I didn't think it was a big deal, but I get it now. It wasn't just a prank. I hurt you. And I'm sorry for that. Maya didn't say anything for a long moment. Finally, she closed her book and stood up. You can't just apologize and think that fixes everything. It's not that simple. Tyler bit his lip. I know. But I want to try. Maya looked at him for a long time, weighing his sincerity. Then, she nodded. This doesn't go away overnight. But I'll listen. Tyler let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. And for the first time since that day, he didn't feel so alone. Tyler sat in the school counselor's office, staring at the floor. His hands were sweating. The room felt too small. Too close. Too heavy. It had been a week since his conversation with Maya, and since then, things had only gotten worse. The whispers hadn't stopped. If anything, they were louder. He couldn't walk through the hallways without hearing someone murmur his name or look at him like he was a ghost. But now, sitting here with Mr. Thompson, the school counselor, he felt the weight of his actions more than ever. I'm glad you came, Tyler, Mr. Thompson said, his voice calm but firm. But I'm going to be honest with you. You can't just apologize and expect it all to go away. Tyler nodded slowly, looking up at the counselor. I know, he said. I didn't realize what I did until everything blew up. I didn't think it would be like this. Mr. Thompson leaned forward, his hands resting on the desk. That's the thing, Tyler. People like you, people with privilege, often don't realize the impact of their actions until it's too late. But now, you have to take responsibility, not just for your words, but for the consequences. It's not enough to say sorry. You have to show that you're willing to change, and that means action. Tyler felt the heat rise in his cheeks. He had no idea what kind of action the counselor was talking about. He was used to being the one who had all the answers, used to fixing things with a smile or a joke. But now, it was different. After the meeting, Tyler sat outside the counselor's office for a long time, trying to process everything. He had a choice now. He could ignore this, pretend it wasn't as big a deal as everyone said it was. Or he could actually try to fix things, to learn something from this. To show everyone that he wasn't just the guy who had cut a girl's hair in front of the whole school. But how? The next day, Tyler showed up at school earlier than usual. He walked straight to the library where Maya was, hoping she wouldn't think he was just there to apologize again. This time, he wanted to do something different. Maya was at the back, surrounded by a small group of students who were part of the #CutFromTheRoots movement. When she saw him, she raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting him. What do you want, Grayson? She asked, her tone cautious but not hostile. Tyler swallowed. He couldn't back down now. I want to help, he said, his voice steady but unsure. I don't know how, but I know I can't just sit by anymore. I want to learn. I want to make it right. The students around her glanced at each other, clearly skeptical. Maya studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she nodded. Help us with the next project, she said simply. We're organizing a community event, something to raise awareness about the importance of cultural respect. You can help with that. But understand this, actions speak louder than words. If you're serious about this, you have to show it. Tyler nodded, a lump forming in his throat. He was ready. He didn't know how he was going to help, but he knew this was his chance to prove that he could be better. The next few days were a blur of meetings, flyers, and phone calls. Tyler threw himself into the event, not as a leader, but as someone who was there to support the movement. He didn't expect to be praised. He didn't even expect to be liked. But he was willing to do the work. The event was scheduled for the following Friday, a community fair that would highlight the cultural diversity at Eastview High. There would be food, music, performances, and speeches, each aimed at educating students about the importance of respecting different cultures, identities, and experiences. Tyler wasn't in charge of anything huge. He didn't get to pick the music or the speakers, but he was there every day, helping with setup, handing out flyers, and talking to the students who were involved. At first, the response was mixed. Some students didn't understand why Tyler, of all people, was suddenly involved in this. He could hear the whispers again, the ones that said, "Isn't this the guy who cut Maya's hair?" But there was something different this time. The students who didn't know him well seemed open to the idea that he was trying to make amends. The ones who did know him, they were still waiting to see if he was genuine. The day of the event arrived, and the school gymnasium was buzzing with energy. Tables were lined with banners showcasing different cultures, and there was a stage where students from various cultural clubs gave speeches and performances. Tyler moved between the booths, offering help where needed, but mostly staying in the background. It wasn't until he saw Maya on stage, speaking about the importance of cultural pride and resilience, that he realized just how much this event meant to her, and to everyone else who had been part of the movement. She didn't just want to change the school's view on hair, she wanted to change the way people thought about respect. She wanted the world to know that everyone deserved to feel seen. And in that moment, Tyler understood. Later in the afternoon, Tyler found himself alone at one of the booths, cleaning up after the event. He was wiping down the table when Maya walked over, her expression more relaxed than he'd seen before. "You did good today," she said quietly. Tyler looked up, surprised. "You think so?" Maya nodded. "You didn't try to take over. You didn't try to make this about you. You just helped where you could." Tyler felt something warm spread through his chest. "I'm still learning," he said. "But I'll keep trying." Maya smiled. "That's all anyone can ask for." Tyler hesitated for a moment before speaking again. I never meant to hurt you," he said softly. "And I'm sorry. I don't know how to make it right, but I'll keep trying." Maya's eyes softened. "I know. Just keep doing what you're doing. That's the best apology you can give." Tyler nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle in. By the time the event ended, Tyler had learned something important: redemption wasn't about being perfect. It wasn't about erasing the past, it was about owning up to mistakes, showing up when it mattered, and proving through actions that you were capable of change. And as he left the gym that day, he didn't feel the need to explain himself to anyone. He just felt free. The days after the community event felt different. There was a shift in the air at Eastview High. Tyler could feel it. The tension that had followed him through every hallway, every class, every lunch break, gone. It wasn't that everyone had suddenly forgotten what he had done. No, that wasn't possible. But there was a sense that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't the same guy who had cut Maya's hair anymore. For the first time in what felt like forever, Tyler didn't feel the weight of judgment on his shoulders. People still talked about him, of course. He overheard whispers from time to time, but the conversations weren't as harsh anymore. They were more like curious glances, and Tyler knew he had earned them. But it wasn't just the students who noticed the change. Teachers, too, seemed to be treating him differently. There were no more raised eyebrows when he asked for help in class. He wasn't just the popular kid anymore. He was something else. Maya, however, was still a mystery. She had been friendly at the event, and there was no denying that their conversations were no longer as strained. But she wasn't ready to just forget about what had happened. She was still hesitant, still cautious when she spoke to him. And Tyler knew that he had a long road ahead if he wanted to rebuild that trust. One afternoon, a week after the event, Tyler sat in his usual spot in the cafeteria, eating his lunch. He had hoped that maybe Maya would walk by, that maybe they could talk more. But she was nowhere in sight. It was then that Jason sat down next to him, looking as serious as he ever had. "Yo, man, how's it going?" Jason asked, breaking the silence. Tyler shrugged. "It's alright, I guess. Things are better. But Maya? She's not giving me the time of day." Jason raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, well, that's gonna take time. You don't just mess with someone's dignity and expect them to be cool with it the next day. You know that, right?" Tyler nodded, his face hardening. "I get it. I do. But I need to do something, Jason. I need to show her that I'm serious about changing. I don't want her to just forgive me because I'm Tyler Grayson. I want her to see that I'm more than that." Jason studied him for a long moment. "You're on the right track, man. Just don't expect it to happen overnight. Actions speak louder than words. Keep doing what you're doing, and eventually, she'll see it." Tyler nodded again, appreciating the words of his friend, but still feeling the uncertainty gnawing at him. The next few days felt like a blur. Tyler spent more time in the library, helping with school projects, volunteering at events, and even mentoring younger students who needed guidance. He wasn't the star of anything anymore. He was just there, consistent, quiet, and trying to make up for his past mistakes. It was a new experience for him, and though it was humbling, Tyler started to feel a sense of pride in the little things. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was just being. One day, as Tyler was packing up his books after another study session, he felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned around to see Maya standing there, her expression still cautious, but a little softer than it had been before. "Hey," she said quietly, fidgeting with the strap of her backpack. "Can we talk?" Tyler's heart skipped a beat. This was it. He nodded quickly, trying to keep his cool. "Yeah, of course." They walked down the hall together, the silence between them not as awkward as before, but still heavy with unspoken words. When they reached a quiet corner near the gym, Maya stopped and turned to face him. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice steady. "And I need you to understand something. What you did, it wasn't just a prank. It was a violation. You took something from me, Tyler. Something that I've spent years building. You can't just undo that with a few good deeds." Tyler's stomach tightened. "I know. And I'm sorry, Maya. I can't change what happened, but I can prove to you that I'm not the same person I was. That I don't think the way I used to." Maya looked at him, her eyes searching his face, as if trying to gauge if he was being genuine. "You've been trying, I'll give you that. I can see it. But it's not just about trying. It's about breaking down the barriers that people like you, people who've never had to face this kind of thing, put up without even realizing it." Tyler's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. "What do you mean?" She sighed, sitting down on a nearby bench. "You don't get it, do you? You've been a part of the system that oppresses people like me. The ones who don't fit the mold. The ones who have to fight for respect, for recognition, just to be seen. What you did wasn't just about me, it was about everything that comes with being a person of color in a world that doesn't always see you for who you are. And that's what you need to understand if you want to make things right." Tyler stood there, feeling a wave of realization hit him. It wasn't just about the hair. It wasn't just about him and Maya. It was about the deeper, systemic issues that Maya had been fighting her whole life. And for the first time, Tyler saw it clearly, everything she had been dealing with, everything she had struggled to overcome. And everything he had never even considered. "I never thought about it like that," he said quietly, sitting down beside her. "I get it now. I've been blind to all of that." Maya looked at him, her expression softening. "I know. And that's why I'm saying, if you really want to do better, you have to break those barriers down. Not just for me, but for everyone who's been silenced." Tyler nodded, a lump forming in his throat. He had so much to learn, but he was ready to do it. "I want to. I really do. Maya smiled, the first real smile Tyler had seen from her in a long time. I believe you, Tyler. Just don't forget, it's about more than just saying you're sorry. It's about showing it in everything you do. That afternoon, Tyler left school with a new sense of purpose. He wasn't just the guy who had messed up anymore. He wasn't just the guy who had cut Maya's hair and hoped everything would go back to normal. He was someone who wanted to help tear down the walls that divided them. Someone who wanted to be part of the solution, not just the problem. And it started with Maya. But it didn't end there. The following weeks felt like a blur. Tyler had become a different person, not just on the surface, but at his core. He no longer felt the need to impress anyone, no longer cared about being the most popular guy in school. His life now revolved around something much bigger than that, something that had nothing to do with how many followers he had or how many people knew his name. Tyler had started to truly listen. He'd immersed himself in the history and experiences of people like Maya, people whose voices had often been silenced or dismissed. He'd read books. He'd attended meetings. He'd listened to students who had shared stories about their own struggles with discrimination, bigotry, and prejudice. Every day was a step toward understanding, but it also felt like a battle to confront his own ignorance. He was no longer just doing it for Maya, or even for the school. He was doing it for himself. But the challenge now was proving that this was more than just a phase, more than just a band-aid on the problem. He had to show, through his actions, that he was capable of real change. Not just the kind of change that earned you praise, but the kind that inspired others to think critically about the world around them and how they treated each other. The first real test came one Thursday afternoon in history class. The teacher, Mrs. Parker, had assigned a group project on social movements, past and present. The groups were randomly selected, and, to Tyler's surprise, he was paired with none other than Jason. At first, Tyler was unsure of what to expect. He had always worked alone in the past, dominating group projects with his charm and influence. But now, he knew that wasn't enough. This project was important. It wasn't just about getting a good grade anymore. It was about learning something real. I know we're supposed to work on this together, but, there's something I need to talk to you about first, Tyler said, his voice unsteady as he sat across from Jason after class. Jason looked up from his phone, sensing the seriousness in Tyler's tone. What's up, man? I don't want this to sound weird, but I've been thinking a lot about what Maya said, about the way I've treated people. And I realized something. I've always been so focused on myself and what I can get from others that I've never really paid attention to the world around me. To the things that matter. I want to do something bigger than just making myself look good. I want to learn about real change. Jason raised an eyebrow, clearly taken aback. Bro, you're talking like a whole new person. What's going on? Tyler sighed, running a hand through his hair. I don't know. I guess I'm just tired of pretending. I want to be better. I want to be part of something that actually matters. Jason paused, considering his words carefully. That's a big shift. But if you're serious about it, I think we can work with that. We've got the project on social movements. Maybe we can focus on something that's meaningful to you. Something you care about. Tyler nodded, already thinking ahead. Yeah. Maya said something about breaking down barriers. I think we should do our project on the civil rights movement, and then tie it into what's going on now. How movements evolve, and how we all have a responsibility to keep fighting for equality. Jason sat back in his chair, looking impressed. All right. That sounds like a solid plan. But you know we can't just write a paper. If we're going to make a real impact, we need to do something. We need to show people what we're talking about. Tyler's eyes lit up. What if we set up a rally? Something small, to start a conversation about how people today can be part of social change. A way to connect the past with the present. Jason smiled. Now that's more like the Tyler I know. But this time, it's not about you. It's about making a difference. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Tyler threw himself into the project, researching the civil rights movement and the ways social movements had evolved over the decades. He learned about the leaders who had risked their lives for justice, about the sacrifices they had made, and the power of community action. And with each piece of information, he felt a deeper understanding of the world, and of himself, growing inside him. He wasn't just researching the past, he was connecting it to the present. He saw how the same struggles were still taking place today. People were still fighting for their voices to be heard, still pushing against systems that were designed to silence them. And for the first time in his life, Tyler understood what it meant to truly fight for something. The day of the rally came, and the school gymnasium was filled with students, teachers, and community members. Tyler and Jason had organized a panel discussion, where they invited students from different backgrounds to talk about their experiences with discrimination and the changes they wanted to see in society. They also set up booths to showcase local organizations that were working on racial justice, education, and equality. Maya had agreed to speak at the event, and when she took the stage, Tyler couldn't help but watch her with admiration. She wasn't just talking about her own experiences anymore, she was speaking for everyone who had ever felt unseen, unheard, and undervalued. Maya's speech wasn't just about the past. It was about the future, about how they all had a role to play in shaping the world around them. She spoke about the importance of community, of fighting for what was right, and of breaking down the barriers that divided them. Change doesn't happen when we sit back and wait for it, Maya said, her voice strong and clear. It happens when we take action. When we break through the walls that keep us separated. And that starts with all of us. Tyler felt a rush of emotion, his heart pounding in his chest. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was part of something bigger than himself. After the event, as people began to leave, Tyler found himself standing beside Maya again. "You did good," Maya said, her tone warm. "You helped make this happen." Tyler smiled, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. "I couldn't have done it without you." She raised an eyebrow. "Maybe. But you've changed, Tyler. I can see it. And that's what really matters." As Tyler left the gym that afternoon, he felt like he had just taken the first step on a long road to real change. It wasn't going to be easy. There would still be challenges, still moments where he questioned whether he was doing enough. But for the first time, he knew he was on the right path. And that path? It wasn't about being perfect. It was about making a difference, through action, through understanding, and through a commitment to breaking down the barriers that had kept him, and so many others, from truly seeing one another. The weeks after the rally were a whirlwind. Tyler had felt a sense of purpose he hadn't known before. He was no longer just going through the motions of life, he was living with intention. He had learned that change didn't just happen in big moments, it happened in the quiet ones too. In the small, everyday decisions to choose kindness, to stand up for what was right, and to speak out when others were too afraid to. And yet, despite all the progress he felt he was making, there was still something missing. It was a rainy Saturday afternoon when Tyler and Maya sat at their favorite local cafe, talking about the next steps for their advocacy work. They had spoken about creating a club at school to continue the conversations about racial justice, but the idea of taking it beyond the walls of Eastview High was growing in both of their minds. "What if we took this outside of school?" Maya asked, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "What if we could reach more people, not just in our school but in the community? I think it's time we break the silence on what's happening in our world. People need to hear our voices." Tyler's brow furrowed in thought. "You mean like, a community event? Something that involves parents, activists, local organizations?" "Exactly," Maya replied. "We could host a community forum. A space for open discussion on racial inequality, social justice, and how people can take action. Maybe even organize a volunteer event to give back to the community." Tyler sat back in his chair, amazed at how naturally the ideas flowed between them. For a moment, it almost felt like nothing else mattered, their vision was becoming clearer, and it felt right. "I'm in," Tyler said after a pause. "I mean, why not? We've already started making waves at school. We should keep it going. This could be bigger than we imagined." Maya smiled, her expression lighting up. "Yeah. But we'll need help. A lot of help. From teachers, parents, and people in the community who are already doing the work." Tyler took a deep breath, feeling the weight of what they were about to embark on. "Let's do it. Let's break the silence. Let's make this a new beginning for everyone who's ever felt unheard." The planning process wasn't easy. The logistics of organizing a community forum were challenging. There were permits to secure, locations to book, volunteers to recruit, and messages to send. Tyler and Maya quickly realized that this wasn't just about them anymore. They needed to reach out to people who could offer real support, from local activists to businesses willing to donate space or supplies. They decided to hold the event in the town's community center, a large space that could accommodate hundreds of people. They reached out to local organizations focused on racial justice, education, and youth empowerment, asking for speakers, facilitators, and anyone willing to participate. Maya even invited some of her relatives who had been involved in activism for years, hoping to bring more diverse voices into the conversation. By the time the event was just a week away, Tyler was beginning to feel a mixture of excitement and nerves. He'd never been this involved in something so important, so impactful. There was no turning back now. On the day of the forum, Tyler arrived early at the community center. The space had been transformed, banners about justice and equality hung from the walls, tables lined the room with information about local initiatives, and a podium stood at the front for the speakers. The energy in the room was electric, buzzing with anticipation. Maya was already there, talking to a group of volunteers. She looked up and smiled when she saw Tyler. "Hey, you're here. How's it feel?" she asked. Tyler smiled back, though his nerves were still palpable. "It's crazy. But I think we're ready. This is gonna be huge." The first speaker was a local activist named Andrea, who had been fighting for racial equality in the community for years. She spoke passionately about the history of social movements, the importance of community solidarity, and how everyone, no matter their background, had a part to play in creating change. The crowd listened attentively, hanging on every word. Tyler watched the faces of the audience as they absorbed the message. He realized that this was what he had been missing all along, the sense of connection, the understanding that they were all part of something bigger than themselves. After Andrea's speech, there were smaller breakout sessions where people could discuss specific issues they cared about. Tyler and Maya each led one of the groups, guiding conversations on how to make the community more inclusive and how to take action against systemic racism. Tyler found himself speaking with people from all walks of life, some who had grown up in the same neighborhood, others who had moved to the area more recently. But no matter where they came from, they all had one thing in common: they wanted change. Tyler felt a fire ignite inside him as he listened to the stories, shared his own experiences, and contributed to the conversations. The truth was, he had never truly understood the weight of what people like Maya had carried until now. It wasn't just about isolated incidents or moments of discomfort. It was about a lifetime of struggles that people faced every day, struggles that were often ignored, dismissed, or overlooked by those in positions of privilege. By the end of the event, Tyler was exhausted but filled with a sense of fulfillment he hadn't experienced before. The turnout had been incredible, more than 200 people had attended, and many of them signed up to get involved in local initiatives. The conversations that had started that day were far from over. They were only just beginning. As the crowd began to disperse, Tyler stood with Maya near the exit, watching people leave with a new sense of purpose. It felt surreal. It had all started with a single mistake, a single moment of thoughtlessness. But now, here they were, creating something that could change their community for good. Maya turned to him, her face glowing with pride. I'm really proud of you, Tyler. You've done something huge today. Tyler looked at her, his voice soft but sincere. I couldn't have done it without you. You were the one who showed me what real change looks like. Maya smiled. No, Tyler. You did this. You took the first step. And now, you're showing everyone that actions speak louder than words. Tyler nodded, feeling the weight of those words settle in his chest. He wasn't done yet. This was just the beginning. There was so much more to do, so many more barriers to break down. But for the first time, he felt like he was on the right path. As they walked out of the community center together, Tyler realized that everything had changed. Not just for him, but for everyone who had been a part of that day. They had made a difference. And they were going to keep making a difference. Because breaking the silence wasn't just about one event. It was about creating a movement that would keep growing, pushing forward, and challenging the status quo. And Tyler knew, deep down, that this was just the beginning of a much bigger journey. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? After the community forum, things began to change at a rapid pace. Tyler could feel it. The atmosphere in town had shifted. People were more aware. They were more engaged. And while he had once thought that making an impact meant getting attention or winning accolades, Tyler now understood that real change was quieter, slower, but so much more powerful. It wasn't about the applause. It was about the lives that were being affected, the way people started to think differently, act differently, and approach each other with more empathy. Tyler and Maya spent the next few weeks continuing their efforts, meeting with local leaders, planning follow-up events, and trying to keep the momentum alive. They had become something of a power duo in the community, working together to organize initiatives that would reach even more people. They weren't just speaking at events, they were listening, learning, and pushing for tangible change. But even with all the success, Tyler still felt a strange sense of emptiness. He couldn't quite place it. The work they were doing felt important, it felt right, but there was something deeper, something more personal that he hadn't yet confronted. It was late one evening when Tyler and Maya sat in the small park across the street from the community center. The park was quiet, save for the occasional rustling of leaves in the wind. Maya sat cross-legged on the grass, her head tilted back as she stared up at the stars. Tyler was beside her, leaning back against the bench, his arms folded across his chest. Maya broke the silence first. You've been quiet lately. What's going on? Tyler looked at her, his expression pensive. I don't know. I feel like we're doing all this great work, but sometimes I wonder if it's enough. I mean, we've had a lot of success with the forum, but it feels like there's always more to be done. Like we're just scratching the surface. Maya turned to face him, her eyes soft but knowing. It's true. There's always more work to do. The fight for equality doesn't stop after one event. But you can't measure change by how big it looks or how quickly it happens. Real change is about the people it touches, even in ways that aren't always obvious. It's about making people think differently, to start challenging the way things have always been. Tyler nodded, but there was still a lingering doubt in his mind. I guess I'm afraid that we'll burn out. That all of this will just fade away, and we'll be back where we started. I've seen it happen before. People get excited for a cause, and then, after a while, it's like nothing ever changed. Maya gave a small smile, a spark of understanding in her eyes. I get it. I've been there too. But that's when you have to remember why you're doing it. This isn't about making everyone happy or about being praised. It's about staying true to the work, no matter how long it takes. Tyler sighed, looking out at the park. The weight of Maya's words hung heavy in the air. I don't know, Maya. I guess I'm just worried. Worried that it won't be enough. That all this work we've been putting in won't actually create the change we hope for. Maya leaned forward slightly, her voice steady. Tyler, change doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's never just one person's work. We're building something together. Every conversation, every event, every action we take, it adds up. And even if it doesn't always feel like it, we're making a difference. We're planting seeds. And eventually, those seeds will grow. Tyler glanced over at her, surprised at how deeply her words resonated. You really believe that, don't you? Maya smiled again, a soft, genuine smile. Yeah. I do. And I'm not just saying it to make you feel better. I've seen it happen. When people start to wake up and see the truth, it's hard to ignore it. It might take time, but we'll keep pushing. We have to. The following days brought more opportunities for Tyler and Maya to extend their reach. They were invited to speak at a local university about the impact of youth-led movements on social change. They collaborated with a few local organizations to plan an outreach program to engage high school students in volunteering and activism. But even with all the new projects and events, Tyler's doubts lingered in the background. One afternoon, after a long meeting with a group of teachers and community organizers, Tyler found himself alone in the community center, the quiet of the empty room almost suffocating. He leaned against the wall, running his hands through his hair in frustration. Maya, who had been working on organizing flyers for an upcoming event, appeared at the doorframe. Everything all right? She asked, her tone gentle. Tyler looked up, meeting her gaze. I'm just overwhelmed. There's so much to do, and I feel like I'm not doing enough. Like I'm just going through the motions, checking off boxes, but it's not enough to make a real difference. Maya walked over and sat next to him on the bench. You're doing more than enough. But you have to be patient with yourself, too. This kind of work isn't something that can be done overnight. It's like building a house. You start with a strong foundation, but you have to lay brick by brick, day by day. Tyler let out a long breath, nodding. I know, sometimes it feels like we're not reaching enough people. Or that we're not going fast enough. Maya's voice was calm as she spoke. Change isn't about speed, Tyler. It's about consistency. It's about showing up, every day, even when it feels like nothing is moving. Eventually, it will. Tyler felt the weight of her words sink in, and for the first time in a while, he let himself relax, just a little. Maybe this journey wasn't about being the quickest or the loudest. It was about being steady and persistent, about creating a ripple effect that would touch people when they least expected it. The next few weeks were a blur of community work, school events, and outreach. Tyler and Maya became fixtures in their town's conversations about racial justice and equality, steadily gaining more support and involvement. It wasn't always easy, and there were moments of frustration, but with each passing day, Tyler felt more certain about the path he was on. And through it all, he knew one thing for sure, the bond he shared with Maya wasn't just about the work they were doing together. It was about the quiet understanding they had, that they were in this together, no matter what. They weren't just fighting for a cause, they were fighting for each other, for their community, and for a better future. The town was buzzing. The energy that had started at the community forum had spread far beyond what Tyler and Maya had initially imagined. More people were showing up to local protests, volunteering for charity events, and talking openly about the need for social justice. But as the movement grew, so did the challenges. It was a crisp morning when Tyler received a phone call that would change the course of their work. He was sitting at his kitchen table, a cup of coffee in hand, scrolling through emails about upcoming community projects when his phone buzzed with a notification. He picked it up, seeing an unfamiliar number. For a split second, he hesitated. He was used to calls from local organizers or parents who had questions about the forum. But this was different. Hello. Tyler, it's Mrs. Johnson, came the voice on the other end. Mrs. Johnson was the principal of Eastview High School, and she had been supportive of Tyler and Maya's advocacy work from the start. Hey, Mrs. Johnson. What's up? Listen, I need to talk to you about something urgent. It's about the event we've been planning for the school. There's been some pushback from certain groups in the community. They're not happy about what you and Maya have been doing, especially with the racial justice talks and the student involvement. They're even questioning whether it's appropriate for a school event. Tyler's heart sank. What do you mean? We've followed all the protocols. We're just trying to start conversations about important issues. I know, Tyler, Mrs. Johnson said, her voice calm but firm. But some of the parents feel like you're pushing an agenda. They're threatening to withdraw their children from the event and calling for a review of your group's involvement. It's become a bit of a political issue. Tyler paused, the weight of her words pressing down on him. He had anticipated some resistance, but this felt different. So, what does that mean? Are we going to have to cancel? I'm going to try and work with you, but we need to have a meeting to figure out what's best moving forward. I don't want this to disrupt the progress we've made, but we have to address the concerns. Tyler felt his chest tighten. It felt like they were taking 2 steps forward only to be pushed 2 steps back. Maya had warned him that it wouldn't always be smooth sailing, but this was hard to swallow. Later that afternoon, Maya met him at the community center to discuss what had happened. She could tell by the look on his face that the conversation with Mrs. Johnson had been difficult. What's going on? Maya asked, her voice filled with concern. They want to cancel the event, Tyler replied, his voice rough. There's a bunch of parents who don't like what we're doing. They think it's too political or too much. They're calling for us to step back. Maya frowned, her brow furrowing as she processed the news. They can't do that. We've been planning this for months, and the students need it. This is important. I know, Tyler said, running a hand through his hair. But it feels like we've been doing everything right, and now it's all crumbling. We're just trying to open people's eyes, but the more we push for change, the more resistance we're getting. Maya exhaled deeply, standing up to pace around the room. Look, we can't let them win like this. We can't let fear control us. This is exactly why we're doing what we're doing, to challenge the status quo, even when it's uncomfortable. Tyler nodded slowly, trying to find the words that would bring him some sense of clarity. It's just hard. I'm exhausted. I thought we were making progress, but every time we move forward, it feels like there's another roadblock. It feels like we're fighting a battle that never ends. Maya stopped pacing and turned to face him, her eyes meeting his with a fierce determination. Tyler, you're right. This is a battle. But it's the kind of battle that takes time. We can't expect change to happen overnight. But we can't let the fear of opposition stop us. We're doing this for the right reasons, and there are people who need to hear this message. We can't let those voices drown out ours. Tyler took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. He had always known that change wasn't easy, but in that moment, he realized just how much he had to rely on Maya, and on himself, to push through the challenges that were starting to pile up. The meeting with Mrs. Johnson was scheduled for the following day. Tyler and Maya walked into the school's administrative office, where Mrs. Johnson was waiting, her expression serious but not unsympathetic. Also present were a few of the school board members who had been among the voices of opposition. Thank you for coming, Mrs. Johnson said, motioning for them to sit. I know this isn't easy, but we need to have a candid discussion about the direction we're heading. Tyler sat down, his palms sweating. He could feel Maya's reassuring presence beside him. They weren't alone in this, and that gave him a small sense of strength. One of the school board members, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a stern expression, spoke first. What we're hearing from several parents is that this event is too divisive. They feel like the conversations you're trying to start are pushing an agenda that has no place in a public school. Tyler felt his pulse quicken, but he held his ground. We're not pushing an agenda. We're starting conversations. We're trying to teach students about empathy, equality, and justice. We're giving them the tools to think critically and make their own decisions. Another board member, a woman in her 40s, added, "But you have to understand that not everyone agrees with you. Some of the parents feel that this is an issue that should be addressed at home, not in school." Maya leaned forward, her voice calm but firm. "If we wait for change to happen on its own, we'll be waiting forever. These issues need to be addressed in every space, especially in schools. Schools are where young people shape their values, where they learn what it means to be part of a community. We're giving them a chance to engage with these issues in a constructive way, and I don't think we should take that opportunity away." Tyler looked around the room, feeling the weight of every word Maya spoke. He knew she was right. This wasn't just about them, it was about every student who deserved to hear these conversations. The conversation continued for over an hour, filled with tension, questions, and compromise. But in the end, after a lot of back and forth, Tyler and Maya left the meeting feeling cautiously optimistic. The event wasn't cancelled, but it had been moved to a more neutral setting, outside the school grounds, at a local park. "We're not backing down," Tyler said, as he and Maya walked back to the car. "We're just finding a different way to make it happen." Maya smiled at him. "Exactly. This is just another step in the journey. We're not going to stop now." And in that moment, Tyler knew that no matter how many obstacles they faced, he and Maya would rise above them. Together, they were unstoppable. The community event at the local park had been a success, but it came with a price. The weeks following were a blur of sleepless nights, long meetings, and constant criticism from those who still didn't believe in what Tyler and Maya were doing. Some people from the school board were unhappy that the event had moved off campus, seeing it as a sign of weakness. Others, particularly from the more conservative factions of the community, accused them of overstepping their boundaries. Tyler and Maya had come to expect resistance, but the negativity was taking a toll. Every time they thought things were starting to settle, a new issue would arise: emails, phone calls, and social media posts questioning their motives and their methods. It wasn't just the opposition that was wearing them down, it was the exhaustion. Tyler found himself questioning whether he could keep pushing forward at the same pace. Every time he saw Maya, she had the same tired look in her eyes, but she never complained. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon and the streets of the town started to quiet down, Tyler sat alone in the community center, staring at a pile of papers on the desk. He was supposed to be planning their next event, but his mind was scattered, lost in the noise of everything around him. He had promised himself he wouldn't let the pressure get to him, but now it felt impossible to ignore. He picked up his phone, scrolling through messages, most of them in support, but some that made his stomach churn. They called him a puppet of the left or a troublemaker. Some even called him out by name, attacking his character. His phone buzzed with a message from Maya: "Hey, can we meet at the park? I think we need to talk." Tyler's heart sank. He knew Maya well enough to sense that things weren't going well for her either. He quickly replied, "Sure, I'll be there in 15. At the park, the air was cool and crisp, the sky a blend of orange and purple as twilight settled in. Maya was already sitting on a bench when he arrived, looking out across the empty field. She didn't turn when he sat next to her, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. "Hey," Tyler said softly, breaking the silence. Maya sighed, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "Hey. I was thinking about everything that's been happening lately. And I think we need to figure out a way to push forward without burning out. This is all getting to be a lot." Tyler nodded, feeling his chest tighten. "I've been thinking the same thing. It's like every time we get one step ahead, something happens that sets us back. I don't know how long we can keep doing this." Maya turned to look at him then, her expression serious. "You're not alone in this, Tyler. We're in this together. We're fighting for something bigger than ourselves, and we can't let the noise distract us. But we have to be real with each other. If we keep going at this pace, we'll break. We need a plan. We need to focus on what we can control, not what we can't." Tyler took a deep breath, running his hand through his hair. You're right. I've been so caught up in trying to fix everything all at once that I've lost sight of why I started doing this in the first place. Maya's voice was gentle but firm. This is a marathon, not a sprint. We can't fix everything overnight. But we can keep doing the work. We just need to find balance. And we need to take care of ourselves. Tyler looked at her, realizing how much he'd come to depend on her steady presence. How do we even do that? How do we keep going when everything feels like it's falling apart? Maya smiled faintly, a glimmer of the resolve that had been with her from the beginning shining through. We take it one day at a time. We lean on each other when it gets hard. And we don't lose sight of the bigger picture. This isn't about us. It's about the community, it's about the future. Tyler nodded slowly, feeling a sense of calm wash over him. It wasn't all about the next event, the next rally, or the next social media post. It was about the work they had already done, the connections they had made, and the people whose lives they had already impacted. The next few weeks were crucial. Tyler and Maya decided to scale back their workload. Instead of trying to organize massive events every week, they began focusing on smaller, more intimate meetings, dialogue circles where they could connect with people one-on-one and address their concerns directly. They invited local leaders, parents, students, and even some of their critics, hoping to build a more inclusive conversation. It wasn't easy. Some people still resisted, unwilling to engage with what they viewed as a divisive topic. But Tyler and Maya pressed on. They listened more than they spoke, creating spaces for people to voice their concerns and their hopes. Slowly but surely, a more positive dialogue started to emerge. Tyler found himself walking into each new meeting with more confidence. His previous doubts began to fade as he saw firsthand the impact of their work, not just in the larger community but in the small, everyday conversations they were sparking. Maya was right. Change didn't always look loud and fast. Sometimes, it was quiet, subtle, and gradual. One evening, after a particularly successful dialogue session at the high school, Tyler and Maya sat outside, reflecting on everything they had accomplished so far. The night was warm, the sounds of the crickets filling the air. Do you think we're making a real difference? Tyler asked, looking over at Maya. Maya smiled, her eyes soft with understanding. I do. It's not always going to be easy, and it's not always going to be immediate. But we're planting seeds. And those seeds are going to grow. Tyler leaned back, a weight lifting from his shoulders as he let her words sink in. For the first time in weeks, he felt at peace. They were making progress, and that was enough for now. But just when they thought things were finally settling down, a new challenge appeared on the horizon. A local news station, backed by some of the same conservative groups that had opposed their efforts, was preparing a segment about the controversy surrounding their events. The report promised to question the appropriateness of their activism in schools and local spaces. It was clear the fight wasn't over yet. But this time, Tyler and Maya weren't afraid. They knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy, but they were ready to face it together. The news segment aired on a Tuesday evening. Tyler had been expecting it, but that didn't make it any easier. He sat in his living room with Maya, both of them glued to the screen as the local news anchor, a polished woman with a sharp gaze, introduced the story. Good evening, folks. Tonight, we bring you a controversial story from Eastview High School, the anchor began, her voice tinged with a hint of skepticism. Students have been caught up in a movement led by local activists Tyler Matthews and Maya Williams. While many have praised their efforts to bring awareness to racial injustice, others are questioning whether the duo's approach is appropriate for a school setting. The backlash has sparked heated debates across the community. Tyler's stomach churned. The footage showed snippets of their last event at the park, clips of people speaking passionately, signs raised high, and a few parents shaking their heads in disapproval. The screen cut to interviews with local parents, some of whom were openly critical. It's not that we don't care about these issues, one father said, his voice edged with frustration. But bringing this kind of activism into the school system? It's divisive. It's not something we want our kids exposed to. Then came the voice of the principal, Mrs. Johnson. While I believe in the importance of free expression, I also believe we need to be mindful of the context in which these discussions take place. It's important to foster unity, not division. The segment finished with a final question from the anchor: are Tyler Matthews and Maya Williams overstepping their boundaries, or are they simply fighting for the future of our community? The room was silent for a moment, the weight of the words hanging in the air like a thick fog. Maya broke the silence first, her voice soft but resolute. They're painting us as troublemakers. Tyler's hands gripped the armrest of the couch. I knew this was coming. I just didn't expect it to be so calculated. It feels like they're trying to destroy everything we've built. Maya shook her head. It's not about us, Tyler. It's about the message. We've challenged the status quo, and this is their reaction. But we can't back down now. We've worked too hard. Tyler sighed, leaning back against the couch. I know. But seeing it on TV like that, it's hard not to feel like we're being demonized. Maya turned to face him, her expression firm. This is exactly why we have to stand tall. If we let their words define us, then we've lost. We've got to show that we believe in what we're doing, no matter how hard it gets. And we need to make sure people see the real story, not just the narrative they're trying to spin. The next day, the phone calls and messages started rolling in. Some were supportive, encouraging Tyler and Maya to keep going, to rise above the negativity. But others, more than either of them had expected, were filled with vitriol. Don't you dare bring your divisive agenda to my kid's school, one email read. You should be ashamed of yourselves. You've ruined Eastview High. Tyler slammed his phone down on the table, frustration bubbling inside him. Why do they think we're doing this to hurt people? We're trying to make things better. We're trying to help them understand. Maya stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder. We know the truth, Tyler. And deep down, so do they. It's just easier to blame the messenger than face the reality of what's happening in our community. Tyler exhaled slowly. But what if people stop listening? What if all this backlash ends up overshadowing the message? Maya turned to him, her voice calm but filled with an undeniable strength. People are listening. Look at the conversations happening now. People are talking about race, about justice, about what it means to be a part of a community. This is bigger than us. We just have to keep pushing forward, keep showing up. Tyler nodded, slowly beginning to understand. We're not the ones who are lost. It's them. They're scared of change. But we can't stop. We can't let fear stop us. As the days went by, the story continued to spread. The media picked up the segment, and the debates raged on. Tyler and Maya became the focal point of a larger conversation, one that many in the community weren't ready to have. But that didn't stop them. They kept their heads high, focused on the long-term goal, and refused to be distracted by the noise. One afternoon, as Tyler was walking home from a meeting, he received a message from an unexpected source, Mrs. Johnson, the principal. Tyler, I'd like to speak with you. It's important. He wasn't sure what to expect. After the segment aired, he had felt a shift in the way the school administration had been interacting with him. But he still agreed to meet her. The meeting took place in her office. Mrs. Johnson was seated behind her desk, her hands folded neatly in front of her. She looked tired, but there was a glimmer of something else in her eyes, something Tyler couldn't quite place. I know you've been under a lot of pressure, Mrs. Johnson said, her voice steady. And I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the work you've been doing. I don't agree with everything, but I respect your dedication. And I think it's important that you hear that. Tyler blinked in surprise. Wait, you respect our dedication? After everything that's been happening? She nodded. Yes. I may not agree with every method, but I see the passion and commitment you've shown to making this community better. And that's something worth respecting. But I also think we need to have a real conversation about how to move forward, together. Tyler's heart began to race. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that instead of continuing to fight this in the way that we are, dividing people, we find a way to bring them together. We may not agree on everything, but if we can create a platform for discussion, a safe space for everyone to share their perspectives, we might just be able to bridge some of these gaps. Tyler sat back, surprised by her words. You mean like a town hall? A place where people can talk openly? Mrs. Johnson smiled. Exactly. It's a step, but it's a step in the right direction. Let's give the community a chance to come together instead of tear itself apart. Tyler left the meeting with a renewed sense of purpose. Maybe this was the breakthrough they needed. Maybe, just maybe, the media scrutiny had forced people to pay attention in a way they hadn't before. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in weeks, Tyler felt hopeful. Maya was waiting for him outside the school. He couldn't wait to share what he had learned. Guess what? Tyler said, practically bursting with excitement. Mrs. Johnson is on board. She wants to do a town hall to open up the conversation. We're not being shut down. Maya's eyes lit up. That's amazing, Tyler. I knew we just had to keep pushing. This is exactly what we've been talking about, creating a space where people can really talk, really listen. Tyler smiled. We're not done yet. But this is a huge step in the right direction. The town hall was scheduled for the following Thursday evening. The anticipation was palpable, and Tyler could feel the weight of it pressing on his chest. After all the media attention, the protests, and the criticisms, this event would determine whether their movement had any real chance of making a lasting change in Eastview. As the days counted down, Maya and Tyler worked tirelessly to prepare. They needed to make sure the space was welcoming, that the format was structured but flexible, and that everyone, no matter where they stood on the issue, felt heard. It was no longer just about their fight. It was about the community's fight to heal, to understand one another, and to move forward together. Thursday arrived with an air of quiet tension. Tyler dressed in a simple black hoodie and jeans, not wanting to stand out but also knowing he couldn't hide. Maya, too, had been up for most of the night finalizing the logistics. As they met up at the community center, the space was bustling with activity, volunteers setting up chairs, arranging tables, and making sure the microphones were working. Are you ready for this? Maya asked, adjusting her jacket as she stood beside Tyler, surveying the room. Tyler nodded, though he couldn't quite shake the feeling of uncertainty. I think so. It's just, a lot of pressure. Maya smiled softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. I know. But you've done the hard part already, Tyler. You've opened the conversation. Now it's time to let the community take it from here. He appreciated her confidence, but there was no denying the gravity of the situation. Tonight, they would have to confront the very people who had criticized them, question their motives, and try to bridge the deep divide that had formed in their town. The doors opened at 6 p.m., and people began filing in, chatting in small groups as they found their seats. There were a few familiar faces, supporters of the movement, who greeted Tyler and Maya warmly. But there were also many new faces, people who had come out of curiosity or perhaps out of obligation. The room was a mix of energy, some nervous, some hopeful, some anxious. Tyler's heart pounded as he looked around. It was a larger crowd than he had expected, and he could sense the tension in the room. No one knew exactly what to expect, but everyone was here, ready to be a part of the conversation. Maya stood next to him as they took their seats at the front, and Tyler noticed the same hesitant energy in her eyes that he felt. But she was trying to mask it, as always, with a calm exterior. As the clock ticked closer to 7 o'clock, the room finally quieted down. The last few latecomers filed in, and the event was ready to begin. Mrs. Johnson, the principal, was the first to speak. She stood at the podium, looking over the crowd with a mixture of determination and wariness. Good evening, everyone, she began, her voice steady but welcoming. Thank you for taking the time to come tonight. This town hall is an opportunity for us to have an open, respectful dialogue about the issues that have been at the forefront of our community lately. There are many voices in this room, and each of them is important. My hope is that tonight, we listen to each other, share our perspectives, and, most importantly, begin to understand one another a little better. There was a murmur of approval from the crowd. Tyler felt a sense of relief. At least they were starting on the right note. Mrs. Johnson continued, I know there has been a lot of disagreement, and that's okay. But I also know that we are stronger when we work together. So let's keep an open mind, and let's do our best to engage in a productive conversation. Tyler Matthews and Maya Williams will be helping to facilitate tonight's discussion. Let's give them a chance to share what this movement is all about. Tyler stood up slowly, his palms slightly sweaty, but he took a deep breath and walked to the front. Maya was right behind him, and together they stepped to the microphones. Tyler's voice was calm but filled with passion as he spoke. Thank you, Mrs. Johnson, and thank you all for being here. We know this is a difficult subject, but it's one that can't be ignored any longer. What we're talking about isn't just about us, it's about our kids, our neighbors, and the kind of community we want to build. We've heard a lot of negativity, a lot of fear, and a lot of uncertainty. But we believe that by coming together, we can create real change. Maya added, our movement isn't about division. It's about understanding. It's about creating spaces where everyone's voice is heard, and where we can discuss difficult truths without fear of judgment or hostility. We're not here to force anyone to agree with us, but we are here to ask for a seat at the table, for a chance to have these conversations. There was silence in the room, and Tyler couldn't tell if it was because of the gravity of their words or because people were unsure how to respond. But then, a hand went up in the crowd. Tyler nodded toward the person. Yes. An older man with gray hair stood up, his expression stern. I've been living in this town for over 30 years, and I've never seen a group come in here and stir up trouble like this. You talk about division, but what you're doing is exactly that. You're pushing an agenda that doesn't belong in our schools. Why can't you just leave it out of our community and let things be? Maya's jaw clenched, but Tyler spoke first, his tone even but firm. I understand your concerns. But I have to ask, what is it that we're dividing if we're talking about equality? What is so divisive about wanting every child to feel safe, to feel seen, to feel valued? The only division I see is when people choose to turn a blind eye to the realities others are facing. The man looked taken aback but said nothing. Maya took over, addressing the crowd. This isn't about political sides or taking sides. This is about human dignity. We're all neighbors here, and it's time we start acting like it. The conversation shifted then. People began raising their hands to share their thoughts, not all of them in agreement, but at least they were talking. Some were hesitant, others eager to voice their frustrations, but the tone of the room began to change from defensive to open. Tyler and Maya kept the discussion civil, guiding people through their emotions and encouraging them to listen as much as they spoke. It wasn't easy. Some moments were tense. But there were also moments of breakthrough. A teacher stood up to share how her students of color had been struggling with microaggressions in the classroom, and a local business owner spoke about the fear of being labeled a racist if he didn't speak out. Slowly but surely, the room began to shift from suspicion to curiosity. By the end of the night, Tyler felt exhausted but relieved. The event wasn't a magic fix, but it was a start. A real, honest start. People had shared their experiences, their fears, and their hopes for the future. As the crowd began to disperse, Maya turned to Tyler, her eyes bright with a mix of exhaustion and accomplishment. We did it. We got people talking. Tyler smiled, his shoulders loosening for the first time in weeks. Yeah. It's not perfect, but it's something. And that's enough for now. The road ahead was still long, but for the first time, Tyler and Maya knew they were moving in the right direction. They had made a space for real dialogue, and while it wouldn't be easy, it was the beginning of the kind of change they had always hoped for. The town hall had been a success, or at least a start. But Tyler and Maya knew that their work wasn't done. The conversations they'd started, the difficult truths they'd laid out, had ignited a flame, but the real test was how long it would burn. The community had spoken, but now, it was up to them to ensure that the dialogue didn't die out in the face of everyday life. As the weeks passed, things seemed to calm down, at least on the surface. The media moved on to the next big story, and people went back to their routines. But Maya and Tyler knew that the issues they had raised hadn't disappeared. If anything, they had only been brought to the forefront. They couldn't let the momentum slip away. One afternoon, Tyler met Maya at the local cafe. They had been using this place as a kind of headquarters lately, brainstorming and planning their next moves over coffee. The cafe was quieter than usual, and Maya was already seated when he arrived, her laptop open in front of her, a notebook scattered with notes beside it. "Hey," Tyler said, sliding into the seat across from her. "How's it going?" Maya didn't look up from her screen immediately. She was deep in thought, her brow furrowed. "I've been going through the survey results from the town hall. A lot of people filled them out, but the feedback's all over the place. Some people are really on board with the idea of continuing these discussions, but others, well, they don't think it's necessary. They want us to move on. Forget about it." Tyler sighed, rubbing his temples. "Of course. It's easy to say we should just move on, but for a lot of people, this is the first time they're having these conversations. How do we make them understand that this can't just be swept under the rug?" Maya closed her laptop and looked directly at him. "We keep pushing. We can't let them forget. If we give up now, everything we've worked for will have been for nothing. We need more events like the town hall, more open conversations, more places where people can share their stories. But it's not going to be easy." Tyler leaned back in his chair, the weight of her words sinking in. "No, it's not. But we've come this far. We can't stop now." Over the next few weeks, Tyler and Maya began organizing more community events. They planned discussions, listening sessions, and even art exhibits to highlight the voices and experiences of those who felt marginalized. They weren't just trying to bring people together, they were trying to force them to face the uncomfortable truths they had been avoiding for years. It was a slow process, and at times, it felt like they were making little progress, but they kept going. Still, the pushback was constant. There were town meetings where their efforts were dismissed, and online forums where people, many of whom had never attended the town hall, questioned their motives. The critiques ranged from dismissive to outright hostile. "You're just stirring up trouble," one comment read. "What are you really trying to accomplish here? No one asked for your activism." Tyler often found himself wondering how many people genuinely believed that or if they were just afraid of the change Maya and he were pushing for. It was frustrating. It felt like every step forward came with 2 steps back. But Maya's resolve never wavered. "We can't let them stop us, Tyler. This is bigger than one person's opinion. This is about changing the way people think, changing the way they see each other." One evening, after a particularly exhausting day of dealing with online backlash, Tyler and Maya sat in her car, parked outside a local park where they had just finished one of their smaller listening sessions. The park was quiet, the evening air cool and crisp. "This is tough," Tyler said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I feel like we're running into a brick wall every time we try to move forward. Maybe it was naive to think we could just change everything overnight." Maya turned to him, her face soft but resolute. "We're not trying to change everything overnight. Change doesn't happen in one big moment, it happens slowly, one conversation at a time. We're planting seeds, Tyler. They might not grow right away, but that doesn't mean they won't eventually." Tyler nodded, though he still felt a deep sense of doubt gnawing at him. The community hadn't been as responsive as he had hoped. In fact, many people seemed content to let the problem of racial inequality fester in the background, believing it wasn't their issue to deal with. But Maya was right. Change was slow. And he couldn't give up just because it wasn't happening as quickly as he wanted it to. A breakthrough came one afternoon when Maya received an email from an unexpected source, Mrs. Johnson, the principal. "I've been hearing a lot of positive feedback about the town hall," Mrs. Johnson wrote. "I know we've had our differences, but I want to suggest a potential partnership between you two and the school. I think we can find a way to bring more conversations about race, equity, and inclusion into the school curriculum. I'd like to meet with you both to discuss how we can make this happen." Maya was ecstatic when she read the email aloud to Tyler. "This is huge, Tyler. This is the opportunity we've been waiting for. The school is finally listening." Tyler's heart raced as he took in the words. "Are you serious? Mrs. Johnson is offering to work with us? After everything?" Maya smiled, her eyes shining with hope. "Yes. I think this could be the turning point we've been working for. But it won't be easy. It's going to take time, and we'll have to work with the administration to figure out the details. But it's a step in the right direction." The meeting with Mrs. Johnson was scheduled for the following week. When they walked into her office, Tyler and Maya were ready for a serious discussion. Mrs. Johnson was already seated behind her desk, her expression businesslike but open. "Thank you for coming," she said, gesturing for them to sit down. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened at the town hall, and I want to explore how we can continue the momentum. We need to address the concerns of the community, but we also need to provide education and space for these conversations." Maya spoke first, her voice steady. "We're ready to help in any way we can. We want to work with the school, with the teachers, to create programs that aren't just about talking about the issues, but about changing the way people see each other. Real action, not just words." Mrs. Johnson nodded. "Exactly. The students need to understand that these aren't just issues for certain groups, they're everyone's issues. I think we can start by integrating this into the curriculum in a way that's inclusive and respectful of all viewpoints." Tyler looked at Maya, and for the first time in a while, he saw the glimmer of hope that had been missing. This was more than just a conversation. It was the beginning of a real, concrete change. As the weeks went on, Tyler and Maya worked closely with Mrs. Johnson and a team of educators to design a new curriculum that would address issues of race, equity, and inclusion in a way that was accessible to all students. It wasn't an easy process. There were disagreements, obstacles, and moments of doubt, but slowly, the program began to take shape. It was just the beginning, but it was enough to give them both hope. The divide wasn't going to close overnight, but with each conversation, each program, and each person who listened, the gap was getting smaller. Tyler felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were still in the fight, but this time, he knew they weren't alone. The momentum that Tyler and Maya had worked so hard to build was starting to feel like it was gaining some ground. The new curriculum was beginning to be implemented in schools, and there was talk of creating a community-wide initiative aimed at fostering diversity, inclusion, and understanding. But with progress came resistance, and Tyler knew the road ahead wouldn't be without challenges. It was a bright Saturday morning when Tyler and Maya met up at the local coffee shop, as usual, to go over their next steps. The place was packed with people enjoying the weekend, but it didn't take long for the two of them to find a quiet corner to talk. As they sat down, Tyler could see the exhaustion in Maya's eyes. "What's going on?" he asked, noticing how tense she seemed. Maya sighed deeply, running a hand through her hair. "I've been getting a lot of emails from people who are upset about the changes in the curriculum. Some parents are really against it. They don't think the school should be talking about race and diversity. They think it's too political." Tyler frowned, glancing at her laptop where several angry emails were opened. "I knew this was coming. But it's so frustrating. These are the same people who claim they want progress, yet they resist anything that challenges their comfort zone." Maya's voice was firm but filled with the weight of frustration. "It's like they think if they just ignore the problem, it'll go away. But these issues are real, Tyler. They're not going anywhere just because people pretend they don't exist. Tyler nodded, his own anger simmering just beneath the surface. Yeah. But we can't stop now. We have to keep pushing. Every step we take, every new program, it's going to be met with opposition. That's just how it goes. But we can't back down. Not now. Despite the resistance, Tyler and Maya continued to push forward. They were now working closely with Mrs. Johnson and several teachers to integrate lessons on equity, diversity, and inclusion into the school's regular curriculum. But no matter how much progress they made, the backlash was loud and persistent. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Tyler checked his phone to find a new post on the town's local forum. It was an open letter from a group of parents, a well-organized coalition, speaking out against the new educational initiatives. We do not need our children being taught these radical ideas in the classroom, the letter read. We believe in traditional values and the importance of focusing on academics, not divisive politics. We urge the school board to reverse the decision to implement this controversial curriculum. Tyler's blood boiled as he read the words. The letter seemed to misrepresent everything they were working toward: unity, understanding, and equality. But more than that, it felt like a direct attack on everything he and Maya had fought for. He threw the phone down onto the table, his frustration bubbling over. I can't believe this. They're calling this divisive? All we're trying to do is make sure everyone has a voice. That's not radical. That's basic human decency. Maya was quiet for a moment, her gaze far away as if processing the weight of the situation. We knew it wouldn't be easy. But this is different. This is organized resistance. It's like they're rallying people against change. Tyler stood up, pacing back and forth in frustration. We can't let them win, Maya. We can't let them take this away. What are we supposed to do now? Maya's voice was calm, but resolute. We keep fighting. We keep showing up. We keep having the conversations that need to be had. Because no matter how loud the opposition gets, we know we're on the right side of history. The next few weeks were a test of their resolve. The backlash grew stronger, and Tyler found himself getting more and more discouraged by the day. It wasn't just the angry letters or the online posts. There were small comments from teachers and students, remarks made in passing, but with a clear sense of disdain. You really think this stuff is going to change anything? One teacher had said during a meeting. People are just going to go back to doing what they've always done. The school isn't a place for this kind of political talk. Tyler bit his tongue, but it was becoming harder and harder to ignore the subtle, and not so subtle, resistance. Even some of his own friends, people he had known for years, were distancing themselves. They weren't necessarily saying anything overtly racist, but they weren't exactly jumping on board with the movement either. Yet, despite the challenges, there were moments that made it all feel worth it. One afternoon, after an especially difficult community meeting, Tyler walked out to find a student named Rachel waiting for him outside. She was a senior, quiet but determined, and she had been a part of one of the student groups supporting the changes. She approached Tyler hesitantly, but with a smile on her face. "Hey, Tyler," she said softly. "I just wanted to say thank you." Tyler raised an eyebrow. "For what?" Rachel looked down at her feet for a moment before meeting his gaze again. "For everything you're doing. I know it's not easy. But honestly, these changes, they've made a difference. I've heard more of my classmates talking about this stuff than ever before. They're listening. And that's because of you." Tyler's heart softened at her words. "I didn't expect it to be easy, but hearing that makes it all feel a little more worth it." Rachel nodded, a serious expression on her face. "You're changing things, even if it doesn't always feel like it. And no matter how much resistance there is, I know I'm not the only one who feels this way." Tyler smiled, feeling a surge of hope. "Thanks, Rachel. That means more than you know." As the days passed, Tyler and Maya continued to engage in difficult conversations, even when they felt like they were up against a wall. They spoke to parents, held more community meetings, and worked tirelessly to maintain the momentum they had started. It wasn't easy, and the road ahead still felt uncertain, but they could see the cracks forming in the wall of resistance. People were beginning to question their preconceived notions, slowly but surely. In a final twist of fate, Tyler received an invitation to speak at the school board meeting. It wasn't something he had expected, but it was an opportunity he knew they had to take. The day of the meeting arrived, and Tyler and Maya stood together at the front of the room, surrounded by both supporters and opponents of the movement. The room was tense, the air thick with anticipation. Tyler looked out at the crowd, his mind racing. But as he stood there, he realized something. They had come this far. And no matter what happened, they weren't backing down. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Tyler said, his voice steady and confident. "We're here not just to push for change, but to ask for understanding. This isn't about us versus them. It's about all of us working together to create a community where everyone feels valued, heard, and respected." There was a long pause. A few people exchanged glances. Tyler could feel the tension in the room, but he also felt something else. A shift. A subtle change in the air. "We're not asking for everyone to agree with us," Maya added. "We're asking for the chance to continue this conversation, because it matters. And because it's long overdue." As the meeting came to a close, Tyler and Maya didn't know what would happen next. But one thing was clear, they had sparked something. And no matter how much resistance they faced, they would continue fighting for the change that Eastview so desperately needed. The school board meeting had been a turning point for Tyler and Maya. While the resistance was still palpable, something about the way the community had responded shifted the tide in their favor. The room had been tense, but as they spoke, something intangible began to change. It wasn't just the words they said, it was the way they said them. The way they stood firm, unapologetic but empathetic, that made the crowd listen. They weren't backing down, and that conviction was what made all the difference. In the weeks that followed, there were signs of change. Small signs, but enough to give them hope. The school board voted in favor of keeping the new curriculum in place, with a few adjustments, but it was a victory nonetheless. More and more parents reached out to Maya and Tyler, asking how they could get involved. Students, once silent on the issue, were now speaking out in support of the initiatives, organizing events to keep the conversation going. One evening, as Tyler was leaving work, he received a call from Maya. He smiled as soon as he saw her name on the screen. He could hear the excitement in her voice when she picked up. "Tyler, you won't believe this. I just got off the phone with Mrs. Johnson. The district is agreeing to host a community summit on racial equity. It's going to be huge. We'll be able to bring together students, parents, teachers, everyone, to continue these conversations. It's happening." Tyler stopped in his tracks, a wave of disbelief washing over him. "No way. A summit? Are we really doing this?" "Yes. This is what we've been working for, Tyler. It's not going to solve everything, but it's a start. It's a platform where we can keep pushing the conversation forward." Tyler's heart raced with a mix of excitement and exhaustion. This is incredible. After everything we've been through, this is the breakthrough we needed. Maya paused, and Tyler could sense the weight in her voice. "We're not done yet, though. The work is just beginning. We have to make sure this doesn't become just another event that people forget about. We need to make sure the conversation continues." Tyler took a deep breath, looking out at the sunset as the city's lights flickered on. "We'll make sure it doesn't. We'll keep going." The community summit was scheduled for the end of the month, and Tyler and Maya threw themselves into the preparation. It was an enormous undertaking, coordinating with speakers, panelists, and community leaders, organizing logistics, and making sure the event was accessible to everyone. They were no strangers to hard work at this point, but as the days passed, the pressure mounted. They were pushing up against time, and they were pushing against forces that wanted them to fail. But they kept pushing, fueled by the belief that this was the moment they could truly shift the narrative. The week before the summit, Maya received another unexpected call. It was from a local newspaper that had been following their story from the beginning. They wanted to do a feature on the summit and specifically, on the journey that Tyler and Maya had taken. It wasn't the kind of recognition they had been seeking, but it was an opportunity to amplify their message. When the reporter arrived at their meeting spot, Tyler and Maya sat down together, their coffee cups between them. The reporter, a young woman named Lisa, introduced herself and started asking questions. At first, it was about the events leading up to the summit, the challenges they'd faced, and what they hoped to achieve. But as the conversation went on, Lisa asked something that made Tyler pause. "What do you think this moment means for the community, beyond the summit itself? What do you hope people take away from all of this?" Tyler thought for a long moment before responding. "I think what we're really trying to do here isn't about just one event or one victory. It's about changing the way people think. It's about making sure that this conversation doesn't end just because the summit does. We want people to realize that these issues don't go away. And we want to make sure that every single person feels like they belong, that they matter. That's the real change we're hoping for." Maya added, her voice soft but firm, "We want this to be a community-wide commitment. It's not just about talking about diversity and inclusion, it's about living it every single day. That's the kind of change we want to see." Lisa nodded, scribbling notes furiously. "That's powerful. Do you think the community is ready for that kind of commitment?" Tyler didn't hesitate. "It's not about whether the community is ready. It's about whether we're willing to keep pushing for it, even when it's hard. If we can do that, then maybe, just maybe, the community will follow." The day of the summit arrived, and with it came a palpable sense of nervous energy. The venue was packed. There were parents, students, teachers, local activists, and even a few community leaders who had been on the other side of the debate, but who were now willing to engage in the conversation. Tyler and Maya stood at the entrance, greeting people as they arrived, trying to calm their nerves. "Ready for this?" Maya asked, adjusting the lapel on her jacket. Tyler smiled, his heart beating in his chest. "I think so. It's going to be a long day, but it's worth it." The summit was everything they had hoped for, and more. Panel discussions on racial equity, diversity, and inclusion were met with rapt attention. Workshops were filled with people eager to learn how they could do their part. One of the most powerful moments came during a session where community members shared personal stories about how racism had affected their lives. The raw emotion in the room was overwhelming, and Tyler felt a sense of pride wash over him. This wasn't just a one-time event, it was a movement, a living, breathing thing. As the day wore on, Tyler couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. The dialogue was real, and people were listening. More than that, they were engaging. Maya stood beside him, watching the same moments unfold, her eyes bright with emotion. "This is it, Tyler," she said, her voice filled with awe. "This is what we've been working for." Tyler nodded. "It's happening. It's really happening." That evening, as the last people filtered out of the summit, Tyler and Maya stood outside in the cool night air, watching the cars drive off. They were exhausted, but they knew they had just witnessed a historic moment for their community. "I can't believe we pulled this off," Maya said, leaning back against the railing. "It feels like we've crossed some sort of threshold." Tyler smiled, looking out at the horizon. "This is just the beginning, Maya. The real work starts now." As the weeks passed, the summit's impact became clear. There were more conversations, more events, and more opportunities for people to get involved. The narrative was shifting, slowly but surely. Tyler and Maya had proven that change was possible, and that it could come from the ground up, one conversation at a time. But as Tyler stood in the middle of a new town meeting, hearing people speak out and share their thoughts, he knew they hadn't reached the end of the road. This was just one chapter in a much longer story, a story of growth, of understanding, and of transformation. And they were ready to keep writing it. The months following the community summit had been nothing short of transformative for Eastview. Tyler and Maya had pushed through the hardest moments, from the harsh resistance to the overwhelming doubts, but now, they could see the fruits of their labor. People were talking about inclusion and diversity not as abstract concepts, but as integral parts of their everyday lives. The journey had been difficult, but as Tyler stood in front of a new generation of students, it felt like everything had led up to this moment. It was a bright fall morning when Tyler walked into Eastview High School, his alma mater, for the final assembly of the year. This wasn't just any assembly, it was the culmination of the new curriculum being fully integrated into the school year, with a special focus on what the students had learned and how they had contributed to the ongoing conversation of equity and inclusion. Maya was already there, standing near the stage, talking to a group of students. Her face lit up when she saw Tyler. "You ready for this?" she asked with a grin. Tyler nodded, though there was a tightness in his chest. "I think so. It's strange, you know. I've been thinking about how much has changed. I didn't expect it to be this overwhelming." Maya smiled softly. "You and me both. It's surreal to think about where we were just a year ago. But look at where we are now. This is the impact we've been fighting for." The bell rang, signaling the start of the assembly, and students filed into the auditorium. Tyler and Maya stood at the front, watching the sea of faces as the students settled into their seats. He could see the familiar faces: Rachel, who had spoken at the summit; Jake, the quiet student who had once been unsure of their mission but now had become one of the biggest advocates; and even the teachers who had once resisted the changes, now standing proudly beside them. When the assembly began, Maya took the mic first, speaking with a calm authority that had become second nature. "We've come a long way together, and this isn't just about celebrating the changes we've made. It's about acknowledging the work that's still ahead of us. The conversations we've had here, the lessons we've learned, they are only the beginning." The students were listening intently, and Tyler noticed a subtle shift in the way they were engaging with the words. No longer was this just an assembly where they were being told what to do. It was a moment where they were being invited into a larger story, one that they could help shape. Maya continued, "This journey isn't just about creating a more inclusive school. It's about creating a more inclusive world. And each of you has the power to make that change, whether it's here at Eastview, in your community, or wherever life takes you." When Maya finished, Tyler stepped up to the podium. His palms were a bit sweaty, but his voice was steady as he addressed the students. "This school has taught me so much," he began, "not just about academics, but about the kind of people we are, and the kind of people we want to be. A year ago, we faced some tough challenges. We didn't always know how things would turn out. But now, I look at all of you, and I see a community that's stronger, more open, and more willing to fight for what's right." There was a brief pause as Tyler scanned the room. "I remember when I was sitting in these seats, and the world seemed so simple. But it wasn't. I didn't always see the barriers that existed, the struggles some people were facing. But I've learned a lot in the past year, about the power of conversations, about the importance of empathy, and about how we can't be passive when it comes to making change. We have to actively work for it." Tyler's voice cracked slightly, and he cleared his throat, taking a moment to compose himself. "We've made it through the hardest parts. But the work isn't over. In fact, it's just beginning. Each of you has the responsibility to carry this work forward. And no matter where you go, whether it's to college, the workplace, or back into your communities, you have the power to make sure that the values of inclusivity, respect, and empathy continue to grow." The room was silent, every eye fixed on him. And in that silence, Tyler felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that the seeds they had planted were already beginning to take root. Later that evening, Tyler and Maya stood outside the high school, looking at the sunset as it painted the sky with streaks of pink and orange. The school was quiet now, the energy from the assembly slowly fading into the night. But in that quiet, Tyler could sense a deep sense of fulfillment. "We did it," Maya said, her voice filled with a soft awe. We really did it. Tyler chuckled, shaking his head in disbelief. I can't believe it. It feels like everything has come full circle. From the first time we met, to that first resistance, to this. It's hard to even wrap my head around it. Maya turned to face him, her expression thoughtful. It's not just about what we've achieved. It's about what the future holds. We've created a foundation. Now it's up to the next generation to keep building on it. Tyler nodded. And I know they will. I see it in the students here. They're not just learning about diversity, they're living it. They're having tough conversations, even when it's uncomfortable. They're taking what we started and making it their own. And that's the kind of change that lasts. There was a moment of silence between them, both of them looking out at the horizon. Tyler thought about everything they had been through, the struggles and the victories. He thought about how far they had come, from a time when he had been just another student, unsure of where his place was in the world, to now, where he had become part of something larger than himself. Tyler, Maya said, her voice quiet but full of conviction, we've done something important here. But the real work is just beginning. This is only the start of something much bigger. And I'm glad we're in it together. Tyler smiled, feeling a sense of gratitude flood through him. I am too, Maya. I wouldn't have it any other way. As they walked away from the school, side by side, Tyler felt a renewed sense of hope. The world was far from perfect, and there were still battles to fight. But he knew one thing for sure, the journey they had started, the fight for justice and equality, was far from over. It would continue to evolve, and the story of Eastview, of Maya and Tyler, was just one chapter in a much larger narrative of change. And in that narrative, Tyler and Maya had made their mark, transforming not just a school, but a community. They had shown what was possible when people refused to give up on what was right. They had changed the story. And that story was only just beginning. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?